everyone, Trienne here. Welcome back to the Be That, Create That social channel. Whether you are with us on the YouTube, inside our Facebook community, the Female Leader Headquarters, or listening to this on the podcast, I'm really excited to share Linda with you today because as I've been having these conversations for our interviews as part of the community, not only do I love really showcasing what these women are doing out there to make an impact, but the conversations about leadership and how we are leading ourselves and where we are going and what we are creating always get me so excited and worked up. So without further ado, I want to make sure that I bring Linda on here for everyone. Hello, hello.
Hello, nice to see you again.
Yeah, I'm so ready for our conversation. We had a good one before we got started. So why don't you just share with the community a little bit about your passions and how that has gotten you to where you're at today?
Well, I would say on a high level, because if you look at my career path, it's been quite spotted. My passion is really connecting people and really creating community and helping people work together well. So I started out as a corporate climber. I call myself that now because in the retrospect, my whole life was my career and I didn't really care about much else. But I did in that time manage to meet a nice guy and get married. And at one point he came home and he said, "What do you think about moving to Tokyo for my career?" And long story short, I said yes and stepped off of my traditional career path, but still held on to this corporate identity. And then we ended up making 7 international relocations over 13 years.
Wow.
Most of them were unexpected, which is a little bit hard to grasp, I think, but one thing led to another, and that's really how it came down. And then we repatriated to Chicago almost 7 years ago now. And I'm now coaching other women like myself who have given up their career or their other purpose in life to go overseas with their partner. And now that I'm a repat, I actually have a live group of women in Chicago. And that's not just international women. I mean, the majority of it is women who've lived overseas or are living in Chicago overseas, but also other women in Chicago who just want to be with a group of interesting and interested women have decided to join. And so it's really a dynamic, fun group. And it sort of it feeds my international soul because I'm with this really interesting, diverse group of women.
I love that. Yes. So you were able to take this situation that happened for you, and now you're coaching other women through that. And I loved that you shared it's all about connecting and creating community. I mean, if we just had more of that going on in the world today, rather than the separation and the diversity and, you know, who's against who and what have you, oh my gosh. So we'd be so much farther ahead. So were you doing something like that in your corporate space, or was this something you developed due to your moving?
Well, I definitely think in retrospect, I was doing it in my corporate career. And that's actually why I was successful because, I got good grades in school. I got the MBA and whatnot, but I'm not the smartest person in the room most of the time. But what I was really good at is identifying who had strong skills and knowledge and giving them the space to communicate. So I started out as a lobbyist, which was a bit odd because I always studied business, but I was living in DC and I fell into it. And so that really helped me build my communication, negotiation, community skills. And then I went back and got an MBA, ended up working for a large corporation as an internal consultant. So again, I was having to go into different areas where people, mostly men, had 30, 40 years with the company as this early 30s young person just out of school and communicate and convince and create community with them. And then as I started leading teams, it really came down to the same skills. So I think it's all, even though you would look at my resume and say, "Oh, you did this and then you did that," like what's the relation? The commonality is creating community.
I had somebody a couple weeks ago ask me for a resume, and I was like, I can't remember the last time that I created one. That's so awful. But also I thought, how do you even put into wording the skill sets that you get in these different positions? Because you can talk all day about what you did, but when you have to sentence it out, I feel like it's kind of either misleading or you're definitely leaving some pieces out.
Right. And people take credit for things that was perhaps accomplished by an entire team or just happened to happen when they were working in the division or whatever. So I don't know. I think the community and the conversation is so much more powerful than a piece of paper.
Yeah, so interesting. Oh my goodness. So as you were traveling, 7 moves in 13 years is what I believe you said. Ah,
Yes.
where was probably one of your favorite places that you moved to?
We lived in Tokyo twice. The
Mm.
first time it was just my husband and myself. I was holding on to my career, but it was really, I call it my 3.5 years of personal development because it was like a crash course. It was just like, I was still working, but I also realized that there was so much more to life than just a corporate career. And then the second time we moved there, we had only been gone for about 1.5 years. And I moved there and had a baby at 40 in a foreign country, 6 weeks. We moved back, and then 6 weeks later, she was born. So I had intended to hold on to my corporate career, but I had some signs. I followed my intuition, and I realized that it was time to get certified in coaching. And so, because I'd been, the first time we were there, I was still working for my corporate company that was based in the US, but I also started doing some business consulting with entrepreneurial expats. And through that, I started thinking, maybe I should do this as a coach instead of a consultant. And so one thing sort of led to another because I kept my mind open. I stopped living this life of like, I should stay in my corporate position. I should do this. I should do that. And I started saying, okay, what else is out there? Like, what's coming my way that I never could have envisioned in my younger years? And like, what opportunity, I always say that being an expat, someone that lives in a foreign country, it's full of extreme highs and lows. And, I've experienced a lot of the challenges that come with that lifestyle, but I've also been granted so many opportunities and joys that I never could have imagined prior to moving overseas.
I love that you share that, keeping open to the opportunities, because there's so many things that can come our way that even if you don't leave your current position, you can fulfill other roles and do other things that are going to keep you feeling like fresh and new, and you're learning new things and using those skill sets. And I also think to myself, people get so tied. Women specifically get so tied to a role or to an identity that sometimes it can be so scary to step into something that's different. And we know scary and exciting are the same experience in the body, and it's just our mind that's messing with us. So what's funny is, though, I'm not a person who thinks that people have to stay in a 9 to 5 or leave a 9 to 5. I think that you should do what freaking makes you happy. And if you can monetize that, then wonderful. But looking at the fact that like we're leading ourselves through some of those decisions to ultimately create this life, right? So there had to be a time that you made that decision to lead yourself through one of those changes. And maybe share with us one that was a little bit harder for you and how you worked yourself through that.
I had many whispers along the way, but I will say when I moved back to Japan and had my daughter, like I wasn't really, if my daughter ever hears this, I love you. I'm so glad I have you, but I was not planning on having kids. And when I, with intention, decided to have a child, I looked at her and I just thought, I could take this job that I'm being offered. Because the first time I went to Japan, I worked as a consultant for the local subsidiary. I was given a leave of absence in the US. The second time, my division was going to offer me they did offer me a regional position. So I would have still been a corporate employee, but I would have been living overseas and covering that region for the division. And at a certain point in my life, that would have been a dream job. But I looked down at my baby and I thought, I can't leave her with a nanny while I'm traveling. My husband's traveling. And that was sort of the big sign where I said to myself, you know what? You thought about becoming a business coach. This is the time to do it. Like, you can be very fulfilled. And it wasn't about the money at that point, because I was really much more focused. I'd gotten a handle on my values. I was using those as a filter. And, values is kind of a coachy word, but really it's just like, what's important to you?
Yes.
And I knew. And so I said, I'm going to take this risk. Like, it was the first time in my life I really think I had the courage to just do what I felt was right to do versus doing what I thought I should do, or my family thought I should do, or society thought I should do. And I decided to go for it. And then about 2.5 years later, there was the big earthquake in Japan. which Tohoku's in the news right now. So it's a kind of, here we are in August of 2023. So, it's in the news again. And those events were like basically the justification for my decision, because there was a strong likelihood that my husband and I could have been out of town when that happened, and she could have been in Japan by herself, and that would have broken my heart. Let's just leave it with that. So, we were in Tokyo. We didn't have destruction, but there was radiation. There were like all these other things that came up. So that actually was sort of my sign that I made the right decision. And then because, the first 2 times we went to Japan, my husband was on a corporate contract. And so it was all kind of led by the company. But after that, we started going as local hires, and it was never the path that we thought it was going to be. We moved one place, we thought it was going to be 5 years. It was a year and a half. We moved to another place thinking 5 to 7 years. It was 2. Came back to the US not knowing how long we were staying, where we are, et cetera, et cetera. So the controller in me that was living this life of shoulds, learned to just have faith in myself that no matter what came my way, I could figure it out.
I love that. And when you have that belief with that you can handle anything that comes your way, and you choose to understand that it's happening for you and not happening to you. That's a beautiful thing. That is you taking, leadership over what's your future looks like. I love that. So when you think about this community that you've built there in Chicago, then how would you maybe share about how you started that community and what got that started for you?
Well, I've always, I try to nurture my international soul, I call it now, because I love living an international life. But for a variety of reasons, we have chosen to stay in Chicago for now. And so I've always, intentionally or unintentionally, had friends with international experience. And during COVID, when we were all kind of stuck in our houses and then slowly we could start to go outside, I thought, I can start up a meetup group for international women in Chicago and just see who's out there. And right away, I started getting these women joining who were saying, oh, I moved to Chicago during COVID. I know nobody. And I had my coaching business and I thought, I could start doing some programs online for the group that are a bit personal development, but also just a large part of connecting. And people loved it because it was just a way to connect with other locals. And so one thing led to another, and then we were able to start meeting in person. And so now it's more of a combination of meeting in person just to make that connection and create friendships and to have a community. And then also partly personal development, because, I'm a life coach. I'm a bit of a personal development junkie. And so the things that I'm reading or that I'm using with my own clients, my private clients, I love to share with other people, because it's like one little tool can make such a mindset shift that you kind of walk away like, oh, wow, that's like a whole new, somebody turned the lights on and I understand. So every time I have one of these gatherings, the women leave. And like I said, some of them now aren't even people that have lived overseas. They're just interested in the group and what we do. And so people always leave saying it's so nice to be with a group of people who just get it, whatever that may be, get how they think, get the experience they've had or whatever. And so the group continues to grow and to evolve. And I get so much out of it myself that we're going to keep it going.
Yeah. What's so interesting is, so this reminds me of in 2015, I started listening to podcasts, and one of the podcasts that I listened to, it was a weird time. It was right after I had my second daughter, and my sister was like, you should listen to podcasts. I was like, I don't even know where you get that or how you do that. I was so frustrated, and turned me into even more of a personal development junkie than I kind of already was. And one of the things that I heard on a podcast once was a woman said, she was talking about all these networking groups that she was going to and she was doing, and she was really enjoying them. And she said, I was in a small town and I didn't have one of these local to me that I could be a part of. So I decided, if I don't have it, I'm going to create it. And I was like, that is genius. And more people need to do that. So it reminds me of that situation. And that's actually where my business name, Be That Create That, came from. Because it was like, if you don't have it already, how do you get it started? And let's make it happen. Right. So I love that you are, an example of being able to do that.
Thanks. Yeah, I love how that story, because it's really you were open to it, right? Like you had these
Mhm.
thoughts and then it just hit home with you. And now look what you have. Like, it's amazing. And, you know, as a lead, like I try to be a leader with this group. Like I say to them, we're all on this journey together, but I also try to lead by example because I have had a lot of times in my, you know, for example, when we first moved to Japan and my husband went off on his new fancy business trip and I'm sitting there on a leave of absence. I hadn't started my job there yet because I had to create it. I was given this contact with the local subsidiary, but I had to create what it was going to be. And I looked around, my container hadn't arrived yet. My dirty white walls in my new apartment. I was just started crying. I was like, what did I do to my life? You know, I worked so hard and now I've given it all up. Now, of course, that was a moment. And then I got my act together and I realized that I had a lot of opportunities. But the reason I really started my business, like I said, I started out as a business coach because that's what I knew. And I could say to people, like, I'm no longer attached to this big company, but I'm now a business coach. And it was after that earthquake that I realized that I was spending more of my time with these entrepreneurial expat partners doing general life coaching than actual business coaching. So then that was really like, to get back to your, like, when was this? You know, it was when I had my baby, but it was also after that earthquake, I was like, that was the next step where I was thinking, I can tell people I'm a life coach for international women and be proud of that. I don't have to say I'm a business coach who used to work for XYZ. And that was so freeing. And so I try to use, you know, that journey that I went on to finally break free from my corporate job to, and I'm not saying you have to break free from your corporate job, but for my prediction of our future lifestyle, that's what made sense. I feel like I can help make it easier and help them adapt more quickly by sharing my experience and like using tools with them that I wish I would have had back then. So, I mean, that's really, you know, I'm trying to use my leadership skills with this group in Chicago, and I try to do it with my client just to help make the, you know, the journeys that they're on a little bit smoother, so to speak, than the one that I took.
Right. I love that. And everybody needs a guide. You don't have to be their hero because really they're their hero in their own life, but we all need a guide of some sort that's kind of been there, done that. This is what I tried. This is what you could try. Right. I believe every coach needs a coach and every mentor needs a mentor because it's that ripple effect. You know, it's the ripple effect of making a difference in one person's life and then they feel inspired to do it for another. So it'd be interesting to know the people that have gone through your community or gone through your group, then, you know, based on that confidence and that excitement for their travels and where they're staying now, like, what have they done with that? What has that encouraged them to do? So I think that's wonderful work that you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I do think it ripples for sure. And
Yeah.
I've seen it. You know,
Yeah.
so.
And even to their families. I mean, I have 2 young girls. And when I think about my girls seeing me do what I do and how that can encourage them to do something different for themselves, it's like, it's not just about you. It's about the people that you're impacting along the way. I am going to go ahead and put your website up, and then we'll also make sure we put those in the show notes. But what kind of things will people be finding on your website?
So they can find the links to my social media. I share a lot of tips and resources and just keeping it real, like with what's going on in my own life on Instagram, especially. And there's also a opportunity to set up a call with me if you, I'm always happy to share resources. Like I always tell people, I don't feel like I'm going to put a big sales job on you. Like just call me if you have a question about international life or Chicago or whatever it may be. I'm always happy to chat and meet other people. So you can sign up for my newsletter also.
I think that's great. Well, thank you so much. One last thing, what is something that you feel like you're creating or something that you envision with your business that you're super excited about?
Well, the group that I have, I'm actually turning it into a membership, and there'll be memberships for people who are local in Chicago as well as living elsewhere because it'll be part virtual and part in person. And I would love to invite people to take a look at my website for updates on that, sign up for my newsletter to get the latest ideas. Because we do have some people who have since left Chicago that want to stay connected. And I just thought, well, you don't have to live in Chicago to be part of this group. Like it's a great community and there's a lot of online programming that we offer. So I'd like to invite people to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's great. You're doing some good stuff. I'm so excited for you and your future. And I can really tell that it lights you up and fulfills you. And isn't that what we all want, right?
For sure. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being on with us today. And I hope that you guys were inspired by this interview with Linda today, because like I said, this is how, which is so funny, how Be That Create That started was I just decided if I want it, probably so do other people. So I'm going to create it, right? And I love that you are a living example of that. All right. So you can find more from Linda through her website, also in our Female Leader headquarters. If you're listening to this on the podcast and you want to see our faces, you're welcome to jump on the YouTube. We'll make sure that link is down below for you as well. And thank you guys so much for being a part of the community and with us today as we interview more and more women that are doing some great stuff out in the world. And contact us if you would like to be part of the interview sessions as well. All right, everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.